much. And Ellen is going to talk about the civic engagement and societal impact. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And thank you everyone for inviting me. I'm just going to put my slide up and hope this works to share. Oh, hold on. That didn't work as I wanted. I need to put it there. All right, let me try it again. Okay, you can see that?
Yes, we can see that well.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, as I say, higher education civic engagement. I know FinHEC has a section in the quality reviews about looking at societal impact, so I hope this relates to that. So I start here with just a reference from the Assistant DG for Education from UNESCO, in which he says higher education institutions hold a strategic position in society, but are they fully oriented towards charting a more sustainable, inclusive course for the future? That is the question. What will it take for them to adapt to our troubled times once peace is increasingly fragile, as we see today, where climate change is wreaking havoc, and where the digital revolution challenges the very notion of our humanity? What will higher education do? So to put that in context, here's a little diagram which shows probably most areas of public policy and what happens. And higher education, it seems to me, sits at the center of what I call this complex knowledge, research, and innovation ecosystem. Whatever policy area we have in society, whatever area that we think about, from childcare to climate to health, areas about innovation and so on, higher education has an impact on it, not least about the education and training, but in terms of research, in terms of its role in society. And what higher education does and says carries a huge significance for higher education. So no area of society is untouched. And so we asked that question, what are higher education institutions good for? Institutions have had historically strong relationship with the different communities in which they've been based, and indeed where they've been born, developed, and where they're hosted. And over the centuries, higher education has served the communities well, helping people with personal goals, societal goals, providing skills, enhancing living standards, and so on. Providing research, new ideas, innovation, new products, and so on. However, today's challenges require a more collective and coordinated engagement. And higher education is being asked to rethink its role and responsibilities, both with respect to the competitive advantage of their nation and their regions, but also as underpinning societal democratic values and active citizenship. Important that we have citizens who are knowledgeable and understanding the complexity of the issues in front of us. And so the current debate really focuses not just what higher education institutions are good for, but, what they are good for, not just what they're good at. And so this is really a question, what are institutions contributing? And so in that, just to outline it again, higher education provides a breadth of education, research, and student experiences, an increasingly more diverse population, both socioeconomic, racial, ethnic, religious, and so on. Age-wise, increasingly more diverse. It's higher education is a source of human capital, of innovation, entrepreneurship, and so on. We develop knowledge and critical skills that citizens need to succeed in the labor market. We engage with a wide range of stakeholders, and importantly, acting as a magnet for mobile talent and investment and underpinning the competitiveness of nations and regions. Indeed, increasingly higher education is one of the key indicators of national competitiveness or regional sustainability. And they provide a wide range of services, be that medical schools, museums, galleries, theaters, public places, sports, cafes, art galleries, all kinds of things that universities and higher education institutions provide for and in their communities. So why societal engagement? First is that issue around being an anchor institution and around regional development. Your region can be urban, it can be rural, it can be a mixture. But in all these areas, higher education institutions play a key role as what we call place-based actors, generating and based in the location where they are, developing the skills of the locality, working with local education local businesses, SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, and also, and importantly, linking and collaborating with other educational providers, not just other higher education providers, but schools and colleges, and indeed with adult learning. Secondly, there's a whole issue around equality of access, widening participation to all learners of all abilities, of all ages, ethnicities, and so on. And particularly important as people live longer and change their jobs and careers more frequently. And last but not least, and indeed increasingly important, is this issue of public trust in institutions, or trust in public institutions. Finland has a high level of trust, but not so in many countries, and also it is also an issue that has been declining even in countries where we think that has not been possible. Look at some of your neighbors, for example. And higher education is increasingly under scrutiny, unequal access to public goods, and opportunities for parts of society, the issue of people being left behind, and the concerns as to whether or not the system and the higher education system and society as a whole is providing what's required. When we talk about societal engagement, there's often a lot of uncertainty or lack of consensus, let me say, about what does engagement mean? What are we actually talking about? Some people think it talks about student engagement. So it's just exposing students to participating in education, that it involves them either in governance, or it involves them in service learning and issues of that sort. Sometimes engagement refers to, particularly strong in the US, the concept of service. And academics are often assessed according to service. Well, what they mean really is involvement in organizations or committees at the university or higher education institution or other professional associations. So it's very inward in that regard. Sometimes engagement refers to, we use that word, third mission or the third pillar. Coming after teaching and research, we then have engagement. So we've got teaching, research, and engagement, 3 pillars. Or it often refers increasingly to the concepts of regional, civic, or community engagement. And these terms are varied. And there's an important EU report on looking at what we mean by engagement. And people use these terms slightly differently with different meanings, but also interchangeably. And in that regard, we're talking about the relationship between the university, the higher education institution, and the people beyond the campus. And that is a holistic approach, and I'll come back to that shortly. And who are we engaging with? So again, the concept of, I mentioned the issue around students, I mentioned about professional organizations, but here the concept of community, civil society, or stakeholders vary. I mean, who exactly are we supposed to be engaging with? Again, are they what we call civil society organizations or non-governmental organizations, NGOs, working in the country, in the society, local community? Are they your public authorities, your local councils? Are they business and enterprise? Are they citizens at large, the people? And if so, how do you talk to citizens at large? So who are you engaging with, and then how do you do that? And is the community geographically outside your door to the institution, or is it somewhere else? Is it, is the community in another country? Is it on another continent? So we also have this issue about what's the balance between being local, regional, national, or international. These terms have slightly different meanings depending on where you're located. But so you have regions within Finland, but you're also part of the Nordic region. And then you're part of the European community. And then, so how do all these things balance, and what are they? And while sometimes these issues are seen as quite complementary, they can also be a tension between them. And for example, being pursuing this idea of being world class or world excellence or being high in the rankings has also become almost more important, and we see that in lots of cases, more important than being, community engaged. And we see that differential coming up when we look at how research is assessed, how collaborative research internationally becomes more important than research that is focused around practical solutions for your community or your country. There's also then criticism of engagement. And the types of criticism that comes up to say is that too often institutions, as it was quoted as saying, are seen as islands of affluence, self-importance, and horticultural beauty in seas of squalor, violence, and despair, pointing to the fact we've got some urban campuses of higher education in some that are fantastic. I mean, really, some of the so-called top universities, beautiful campuses, and all around them, the cities or the towns or the communities are actually quite poor. Or universities go around treating the communities in which they're operating in and using them as kind of, as it says, laboratories for experimentation. Yet we'll go out and do some research on the local community and use it to write up high-ranking publications for ourselves. So a kind of cultural voyeurism. A lot of times institutions spend what I call broadcasting what they do. So they give lectures or they produce long lists of what they've done in place of actually genuine engagement. So there's a whole range of things about what universities do under the term of engagement, but is it really engagement? So when we come to rethinking engagement, there's different views as to what it represents. Some people see the alignment of higher education with society and the economy as negative. It's an attack on institutional autonomy, an attack on academic freedom. It's a form of instrumentalism or neoliberalism. On the other hand, people see the alignment of higher education with society and the economy as a positive, as a reassertion of the public good principles to which higher education says it espouses. But what is clear is that the demands of society and the economy have strengthened, and that higher education is being asked to rethink its role. Hence the quote at the very beginning from UNESCO, that higher education is being asked to think about its role in regard to enhancing the competitive advantage, the development potential, the role of its cities and regions in a sustainable way, and those issues of sustainability and what that means. And as I said, about underpinning democratic values and active citizenship. So one of the things that I often say is that higher education also needs to own the problems. It's clear that higher education is not responsible for all society's problems, that's clear, but we have a responsibility to help solve them in partnership or collaboration with local authorities, with employers, cultural institutions, with our schools and colleges, and other organizations in society. And we have the capacity to do that, not least because higher education institutions claim to have and do have an abundance of knowledge in terms of teaching and research. They have the skills to undertake research, and they have the skills to innovate. And and in doing so can help solve some of the most pressing and major problems in society today. Developing a shared vision and development plan, helping businesses adapt to technological change. Indeed, the European Commission, the big issues around climate change, the green and the digital agenda, for example, boosting the health of people. We've seen that in a big way with COVID, but we also need to see it in terms of working with their own communities and boosting the health. Improving education from everyone from what I would call cradle to grave, and drawing new leaders in to fields and teaching people and helping with that. So I want to give you three perspectives on looking at engagement. One is about social justice, which looks at the roles in regard to your social movements. One is about economic development, and one is a public good model. So the first one on social justice is around community engaged, the distributive justice. So this whole social justice issue is to the fore, and there are different ways to describe it. The second one is around economic development. And here the engagement is seen to be entrepreneurial. It's about technology transfer. We have technology transfer offices. It's this third mission focus on innovation, working with businesses, setting up new companies, startups, and so on. And the third one is around the regional and public good, civic engagement, a holistic approach for the university as a whole to be engaged. And depending on the approach that you take, there are different ways in which this comes across. Social justice is faculty and students working with the community on community level projects, volunteering, types of student learning with the community, and so on. Sorry, I've gone too far. This one, the economic development one is all about working with businesses, counting licenses, budgets, startups, number of startups, and so on. And the last is the public good model, which looks at a more holistic approach to looking at how universities as a whole engage with their communities. And so to give you that as a definition, engaging in learning beyond the campus walls, discovery which is useful beyond the academic community, and service that directly benefits the public. So that's my definition of what I see as when we're talking about a public good definition of engagement, one that's mutually beneficial, promoting partnerships in co-production of knowledge, because the types of problems we have in society require collaborative solutions, or call it interdisciplinary solutions. Organizationally, rather than setting up an organization that looks like teaching here, research here, and engagement here, I see engagement as a transversal, not as a third pillar, but as something that cuts across everything that we do. It is inbuilt across teaching and research. And another way to look at that is that when we start looking at engagement, there's some levels of which students are asked to do volunteering in their local community. In some cases, they do outreach work. again with their community, but doing slightly deeper work. Then there's service learning. And essentially what that diagram is showing you, sorry, this keeps falling on me. What this diagram is showing is that there's a deepening of engagement. This is fairly low-hanging fruit. Let the students go off and do something. And now as we move deeper, more intense engagement, we're looking at something that is really quite holistic and embedded across the entire university. So what are the implications here for quality assurance? And here, quality assurance can help institutions to meet their expectations and the needs of their stakeholders. So some of the issues you might consider when doing an audit. So on governance, how is societal engagement embedded holistically across the institution? How does it align with its policies and interests of society? How does the institution embrace societal engagement as a strategic objective, or is it simply ad hoc? And how do you set targets, a plan, and a process for monitoring? How is it related to curriculum and learning outcomes? How does a curriculum prepare graduates to be global citizens with a positive impact? To what extent is it supported by innovative pedagogies, emphasis on multidisciplinarity and challenge-based learning? How well does the institution support widening participation? How well does the teaching and learning support students throughout the process, not just enrolling? And recognizing that we need a much more flexible approach to the way in which we organize educational programs. How is societal impact and relevance supported in our research at an institutional level? Not do individuals do things that are meaningful, but as an institution, what's the policy about it? What kind of research supports are there, and how is it built into the way in which we fund and organize our research? To what extent are participatory approaches endorsed? End users being part of research design as co-producers, for example. Here I refer to the EU's RRI, Responsible Research and Innovation Framework. To what extent is societal engagement a criteria for appointment and promotion? Or is it still based solely on research? And what about collaboration and partnership? To what extent does the institution collaborate with other partners in the quadruple helix? How does it balance local, regional, national, and global aspirations? Or is it just pursuing world-classness and a position in the top rankings? So then to conclude, the engagement agenda is bigger than what I call grandstanding, just telling people what you do. What's required is for the institution to be holistically engaged, to reflect this in its vision and mission, and throughout its teaching and research. Institutions need to be key, anchor institutions at the national and regional level. They need to aspire to be globally engaged and educate open-minded, critical, and aware citizens, and through their research to help define global lines of action. And ultimately, engagement, a good societal engagement strategy requires the vision, the commitment, and above all, leadership. Thank you very much. I just point to two things. One is a book that I have done on this topic. Thank you very much. Hello? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Ellen, so very much. And we all hope a really nice autumn time for you, wherever you are. I heard that you are on a trip at the moment.
I'm That I'm in Dublin. I was going to be in Reykjavik, but I'm actually in Dublin. So
traveling in a global world with this team.
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Ellen.
Some comments or questions.
Would you have a few minutes if there are some comments or questions from the public here? Please just, there's one. Just a moment.
Hello, hi, Raili Bender from Aalto University. Thank you, very inspiring speech. I was thinking that how do you feel about higher education as building the resilience of society now that we have faced quite many different kinds of crises in the past few years, and probably there are new crises upcoming that we are not expecting yet. So how do you feel that higher education can build the resilience of a society in addition to the maybe more traditional ways of thinking from healthcare and defense point of view?
Yeah, that's a really important question. Thank you. I think it requires a wide level of conversation and dialogue with the community in which institutions are based, and discussing what are the key issues and where the community needs help. And there are, and indeed the community may be proximate, and it may be the part of a region for more rural institutions, or indeed it may be a combination of urban and rural. But it is an issue of institutions playing their role, not just taking students in, graduating them, and washing their hands after that. It is more intrinsic. It goes to the heart of what higher education can offer, but it's also in terms of what is also sustainable. And I think the role of engagement with the local authorities, with the local community, setting up dialogue sessions, setting up a regional advisory group that works with the university and that has stakeholders from across many different fields, and to discuss some of the key issues and how working together a higher education can help. So I think a lot of that is necessary.
Thank you. And any other questions?
Thank you for a really inspiring talk. My name is Thomas Trestman from Arvada University of Applied Sciences. In one of your slides regarding questions to ask in terms of engagement, I don't know if I interpreted you wrongly, but you put strategic goals in opposition to ad hoc things that universities do. But maybe continuing also on the last question, I would say during the last years, my interpretation of what's happened, higher education institutions have done a lot of ad hoc engagement that has been actually really effective in terms of engagement. So I would question the opposition between kind of strategic goals and ad hoc things that we sometimes do.
Yeah, sir, absolutely. I understand your point. I mean, okay, yes, people do lots of good things, and relying on different people to come up with new ideas is great. The difficulty is, as soon as that person leaves or they get fed up or something, that whole area of work disappears. And it's not, so what needs to happen, it seems to me, is having a much more holistic and strategic approach, where it is not an opting out for certain sections of the department. Oh, that belongs, engagement is their responsibility over there. It's embedded across the piece. What defines, and particularly universities of applied sciences, it defines the entire approach to both teaching and research, to innovation, to engagement. The entire approach is based upon certain principles of engagement, so that it does support individuals developing ideas, but it also ensures that we've got a sustainability of these ideas. One of the comments also that I refer to about what comments or criticisms that are often made is it says we should often undertake a wide range of activities, but activity in itself doesn't constitute engagement. So it's about trying to ensure that we've got a much more sustainable approach to it. I hope that explains the difference.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, everybody who asked really brilliant questions as well. And now I guess it's time for us to move on and wish all the best for you there, Ellen. Dublin, and we're staying in contact. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.